We're gonna end this this day of panels and talks with a panel with only Niantic people. That's going to be super fun. So I'm just going to introduce you to the moderator, Coraly, and she's just going to take it from here. And the theme here is UX through Uncharted Waters. I know there were already some questions in the Q&A that can absolutely fit your topic. I know it's been complicated for a lot of people. Thank you so much for your time. Coraly, I'll let you take it on, introduce yourself, and then introduce your panelists. Thanks for being here.
Awesome. Thank you, Celia, for inviting us. Hi, everybody. I'm Coraly. I'm a UX designer here at Niantic. And today we have with us Victor and Will. They're also UX designers on the Pico team. Super quick, I guess, a little bit about me, and then I'll let Victor and Will introduce themselves properly. I've been working in the game industry for about 7 to 8 years now, as a UX designer specifically, and when I started as a UI designer. Before that, I was a graphic designer for many, many years. And I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I also have a degree in video game development. So I'm kind of like this hybrid of things sometimes, but I do dedicate myself to UX. Who would like to go first?
I guess I could go. So hello, I am Will. I am a UX designer at Niantic, and I've been here for a little over a year and a half. I guess I'm relatively new to the video game world professionally, but not to the UX. I was previously at Facebook as a product designer for about 4 years, and worked on like notifications, monetization there. And before that, I graduated from college. I was at Cornell, and yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Hi, my name is Victor. I'm also a UX designer from Niantic. I work on the Pokemon Go team, and also I didn't came from like a game background. I'm kind of like a tech background. Yeah, I was doing computer vision research before, and my main focus and interest is in AR. That's why I come to Niantic. Yeah, I've been here for over a year, and I've been helping with like AR features in Pokemon Go, including the AR multiplayer, the reality blending, and AR mapping. Yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you again, both of you, for being tributes to this. So our talk today is a little bit just kind of like about process, and specifically in a COVID world. I know that almost everyone in the US kind of just like their entire way that they worked on things shifted when we entered COVID and the pandemic and everything, and especially working from home. And I have the feeling, at least in my experience, when this happened with me, a lot of the ways that I had to do things before, like, did have to adapt and change. And I kind of want to talk first about like, what did the process look like for you guys before we started working from home in March, and how you interfaced and how you worked with your teams on the UX side. And either of you can go first, or if you like, I can go first.
Yeah, I guess I could talk a little bit about, so I also work on Pokemon Go with Victor. I think, well, for us, before COVID, we were a pretty small team. I think it was about 5 people. And so we were still actually probably really trying to figure out our own process for, and we have 2 people who are actually remote. One who is based out in Japan, and one who's based in New York. So we've had, before then we already had like trying to, try and coordinate across, around like multiple time zones, like halfway around the world, and making sure that we can all find times to work with each other. So, so there was, in terms of process, there was a bit of dynamics in terms of like those who were most of us are based out in San Francisco, the rest of us, and you could see each other every day and run ideas by each other, just at our desks. And so that was something that we relied pretty heavily on, because especially in a large, having been working at a much larger org, we have a little bit more structure. Here, it was a little bit less, but we still had to kind of find ways. Every day we would at least meet with all the designers, including in Japan and New York. We would find time every single day to at least meet and see each other, and that's kind of mostly our, I guess, day to day in the way we try to keep up with each other and work with each other on projects. I just want to also again, what we do in those meetings, I guess, is important. I guess to mention, it's kind of like a critique every day. We share our work. We give each other feedback about what's going on, especially because we're still pretty small, and we see all sorts of things across the company. That we use those sessions especially to make sure we can kind of pull the knowledge of everyone to help solve problems that we see.
About how many UX designers were on your team, give or take?
Before COVID, we had 5.
Yeah, and all of you were kind of working on the same features at the same time, or was everyone working on something different?
Well, everyone's working on different things. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just to add on what Will said, since we work together, so I think in terms of collaboration, there are 2 parts. So we have a collaboration within the UX team. Like Will said, we work on different features. So the collaboration within the UX team is more like giving feedback and critique to each other. And we also have a team like our feature team. So that's another type of collaboration. So we will bring some of the feedback from the UX team to the feature team. We will be working with the PM, the product manager, and also the engineers to kind of build the feature.
Cool. For those that are in chat and stuff and attending, just in case, I'm on a completely different team in a completely different city. So the way they structure their team is very, very different from how I do it. I'm the only UX designer on my team, for example, and literally all the features come through me. So I have my hand like through everything. And at least in my case, so I started this year in February, and I was building up the UX process within our team because they didn't have a UX designer until I joined. We have our UI designers and we have UI engineers and backend as well. And then I interface directly with our game designers. So up to a certain point, it was like I work, well, even now, but back then, like I worked very, 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 very closely with the game designers. In my case, like a lot of whiteboarding sessions and brainstorming sessions, all that stuff was literally with the feature owner and myself. We sit down, we just go through the feature and identify like any sort of like pain points or any sort of like wins that I think would be good to just analyze. A lot of times, like in whiteboarding sessions with my game designers, like both of us are just like wireframing on the whiteboard and trying to establish our goals and stuff. So I am very, very involved directly with like spec writing as well, not along with like the flows and wireframes and even prototypes and all these sorts of things, plus the research side too. Like, so on my team, like I have to wear multiple hats. And yeah, like before COVID, that's kind of like how we were functioning. It's not that it's been a huge shift after COVID started, but I was still like trying to build those things up, kind of like what you guys were doing. So once COVID hit and everyone went remote, kind of when did that happen for you, and how did your team shift?
Yeah, so I think it was early March, and just got an email one night. It's like, don't come back into the office tomorrow. So that was like, okay, definitely quite bad. And of course, at the time, like you don't really know what was necessarily going to happen, but you knew it was serious, and I mean, it was going to be the serious for at least the foreseeable future. And what I was actually, while it was definitely hard for everyone, but I noticed it actually really focused on the feature team that I was working with, and really, to drop everything what we were doing, especially because Pokemon Go is a game that is all about, it's live, and also completely built off the fact that you go outside and you gather with other people, you go explore the world outside, and you socialize with people, in together, in different settings. So really kind of focused, I think, the team on what can we do to keep the game working in a way that people still find value out of it, because there's a lot of parts of the game that as we began thinking that people definitely really enjoy, and can we bring those things even if people are home?
Yeah.
And one especially was the social aspect of Pokemon Go.
Yeah, and that's like part of our company pillars as well. Like,
yes.
just real world social is literally one of our pillars, and that fact that we need to explore and keeping that integrity in the game.
Yeah, and so one of the leading ideas that came out really quickly was around raids. And for those who haven't really played Pokemon Go or engaged in the Pokemon Go raids, it's a very popular feature in Pokemon Go, where people gather around certain points of interest that we call gyms, and a boss Pokemon kind of takes over that gym, and you have to kind of take it down together, and then you have a chance of capturing that Pokemon. And before COVID, I think the beauty of that feature is the fact that you get to see people and engage in like a community around it. And before I joined Niantic, I was really noticed that even when I was at Facebook, they would have
raid groups
to to go around, and whenever like a Pokemon came up, we would just like go all over there, take it down. But can we bring that feature to people in their living rooms? And that challenged our assumptions about some things. And so but because of the situation, I think really focused us to quickly pivot and say, okay, how can we make this work? And the urgency of it, kind of like we started thinking about this in like, I think middle March.
When we realized that like, okay, this is going on a little bit longer than, because I think a lot of us thought that like this was probably going to end in like a month or two, maybe at the most summer. And and we, at least on our team, like our assumption in the beginning was, we don't have to shift too much. We don't have to like completely rearrange everything that we're doing and how we're doing it, because this is just going to be for a couple months and that's it, and we'll come back to the office. And that never came.
Right. Well, we made the decision pretty quickly to like, let's go do it. And I think we launched that feature like a month and a half later. I think at the end of April, we had at least launched the remote raids in this first form, which was just being able to see all the gyms in your nearby location. And then a little bit afterwards, we maybe another month or so, allow people to invite their friends, which was like really the main part. We wanted to make sure you can invite friends, and no matter where they were, to play in raids. So that was kind of my experience when it suddenly shifted, and really kind of forced the team to really focus.
Yeah, I still remember the time when, like the whole company is trying to brainstorming on ideas how to accommodate this kind of COVID situation. And we want to kind of accommodate like the play like in COVID situation without compromising the nature of the game, which is go out, like explore the world. I think it's it was actually, I would say it's a challenge and also exercise for the whole company. And we were also thinking about like proposing some AR ideas. Clearly, I think the raid idea is like the more feasible and the idea with more bigger impact. Because the thing is like, I mean, in terms of the read, I think my personal experience with it is that because we work in the ferry building, and there are so many gyms and so many people like along the Embarcadero, the street outside the ferry building. So every day almost when I go to work and go home after work, I can see people kind of lining up playing raids. I think that was like the very satisfying moments, and it makes me feel like a huge sense of achievement. Not because I directly work on the feature, but it's like I work on the game. But I mean, the COVID hit, I think that kind of took that away. I mean, with the remote read, as a player myself, I do feel it brings a lot of like value to me, which allow me to enjoy this kind of play still in this situation.
Yeah. For me, again, like our game isn't like live or anything, what we're working on. The big shift that we saw was apart from not seeing everybody in person, and especially with our team, everyone was kind of like within the same area. And I mean, our where we were in our office, like we were all kind of like in this 50-foot area, and like literally my game designers were like right around me and right behind me. So if whenever I had a question, I could just be like, yo, hey, can we talk about this like for 5 minutes? When COVID hit, like that communication and shifting over to Slack and other forms of communication, like digital communication and stuff, like the first few weeks was a little tricky, or it felt like you were trying to start forming a new habit. And specifically when you're aligning on like different features and stuff, that's where like sometimes breaking communications could happen, especially when you are starting to ramp up in this new process. But for me, that was like the big shift. Like I went from being able to see everyone every day and ask questions directly, especially as I was onboarding, to all of a sudden, I haven't seen anyone in months. And at the same time, like what we started seeing, and actually, I think one of the biggest challenges we started facing as well was an increase in meetings and just being locked in meetings all the time too. So there would be days where it's like back to back to back to back meetings about alignment, about like things that could be maybe better put in like a message or through Slack or through something, but we were just locked in like these video calls all day and trying to identify like how to maximize the time that we were like sitting down together and getting the value out of those meetings was like one of the biggest things. And at first we didn't realize it. And again, because like we didn't think this was going to last as long as it did. Once the month passed by and the second month passed by, that's where we were like, okay, we can't be in meetings all the time. We actually have to create things and create flows and create these documents and stuff and actually like properly align on things without like making sure people are locked and blocked as well. So yeah, that was like a big, like I guess one of the biggest challenges for us as well. On the UX end, for me, I would say I lean very heavily on collaboration with my team, especially like typically I'm always the only UX designer on every team that I've been on, or one of two max. And I lean heavily on being able to collaborate directly with the feature owner or the game designers, and together we work on specs. Which meant a lot of in-person meetings and that kind of stuff. And specifically, one of the methods that I love to use is whiteboarding in person. When we started doing like all this like work from home stuff, it still is very difficult for me to do proper whiteboarding sessions. And that was like a huge challenge for me. That was like big. I mean, yes, digital whiteboarding tools work out there. But for us, for our team, for some reason, it just hasn't like taken off. So I had to find like other ways to make it work for us. What are some challenges that you guys faced on your teams? Like the biggest challenges?
Yeah, I feel I mean, because of the special setting of the team I usually interact with, I usually have to work with team members from Sunnyvale office, from Tokyo office, even from Seattle office. So using Zoom to communicate and also Slack, I mean, it's no stranger to us, but still, I mean, like usually like we will have like, say, if it's a very important feature, we could even have the team members who normally work in Seattle or Tokyo fly to the SF office to collaborate with each other to kind of smoothen the collaboration process. But still, I mean, in most cases, we are able to kind of like talk face to face with each other, especially for my case, because I heavily work on AR features. So I work with many engineers. I still remember the time like I work with one engineer who actually sits on the other end of the office, and I am on the other one, and I have to basically run across the whole office to him. And I actually see that as an exercise. So people could see me running like in the office a couple of times a day. Yeah, I do miss that. And with the COVID, I mean, basically even for important features, we are not able to, I mean, sit side by side to work stuff through. So in my case, I just feel like I make more prototypes to convey my ideas. Yeah, I mean, wireframe is definitely good, but for like features are interaction heavy or like AR focused. So I think relying on Unity or making prototype is more, I would say, efficient to us. But definitely, I mean, for features like I would say involving like so many different stakeholders, it's gonna be a very hard communication process, like all those kind of back and forth communication. So I think similar to what you said, we also kind of rely on the product requirement document. So where we align everyone's comment on, I mean, opinion on the product, the feature, and also we use some commenting tool, like say like commenting tool in Zeppelin or Google Slides to comment on the actual design. So and we can kind of track all the comments and make sure we'll address every one of them.
Yeah, I think to me, even now, the thing I miss the most is the spontaneity that you meeting these people you work with in the office, and I feel like those interactions, just like if you see someone at the end of the day at the desk or just walking, going to lunch, I think those interactions do smooth out a lot of discussions that you could just do in a conversation, and instead of having to set up a meeting for it. And so trying to work around that. I mean, I still don't think it works, but you just have to kind of come up with like ways to mitigate that, and that's the part I still miss the most about being in the office. But more, that's like, I think some things that it's hard to quantify what you exactly miss out there, but and then like more on the personal side of like just being at home all day, because I've now since moved back to my home state of Georgia while this is going on. But I was in a house with a bunch of like roommates, and they're all every day is also just kind of like I am in my own little room, and that also kind of that kind of eventually kind of gnaws. I'm sure it does for a lot of people. Gnaws at you, and also trying there's distractions from that too. I'm trying to work through. Also, we have Comcast, which was pretty terrible. So when your internet doesn't work, it becomes extra frustrating. To especially when you rely on Zoom. So there's all that kind of stuff I had to go through, and I'm sure everyone else did go through some of those things too, and still are. But yeah, those are some things I noticed were.
Yeah, I would say +1 on the impromptu interactions. Like again, because I was still onboarding and stuff, but even before Niantic at other places that I worked at, like just, hey, let's take a 10-minute break and just walk around the building. Let's go outside, get some sun, and just kind of like ruminate a little bit on like the meeting we just had, or this feature that's just like giving us a headache or whatever. Like I miss those things, because when you're in meetings, it's not that you're forced to perform, because it's really not that, but it is a little more official. Whereas when you go outside and you're not like with this pressure of like feeling like you have to know exactly what you're talking about, or feeling like you have to prove that you're, well, yeah, that almost to a point that you're right, or when you're outside, it's like, okay, I can breathe. I can think about this a little bit better. Can I use you as a sounding board real quick? And just like, this is off the record, like, how does this sound to you? And I really miss like that kind of stuff, you know, and all of that. It's not just within UX engineering. I'm pretty sure it does that as well in product and everyone else on the team. Now we don't really have that as much. Victor, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I feel, I mean, in terms of collaboration, the process is something can help, but another important factor will be the trust. I think the trust is really built on top of like in-person human interaction. That's how you know, like you know these people, not just like, I mean, they're just not like a face on the Zoom. So I feel that's very important, especially, I mean, for say during this COVID time, I had to work on some like new feature with some new team members, new engineers. So I think starting from like knowing someone, like, I mean, starting to know someone from using Zoom kind of hurt that a lot. So you kind of have to like spend a lot of time doing explanation, and the person needs to, I mean, gradually grow trust in you. So I think that hurts a lot. I mean, that's not easy. Yeah, also the sense of belonging, I think, is also something very important, and took a big hit from this COVID working from home, because I do feel very proud of like working on Niantic and on Pokemon Go. And through all those kind of in-person interaction and all those kind of like office activities, you kind of like grow that more and cultivate that more. But because of right now we are so isolated from both your teamwork, your teammates, your teammates, and also your normal working environment, I kind of take that away. So I think that kind of could like hurt the morale a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it ties back in, I guess, a little bit into almost our biases. And as UX designers, we all know about biases. But just seeing a person on screen rather than being able to read their body language and actually talk to them and stuff like does affect a little bit. There were some, like, we did get some new folks on our team as well. And there are a lot of people on our team I've never met in person, but they're awesome. And I work with them every day, and yeah, like we make it work, and you start getting to know the person. Going back to processes, I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about when you shifted over to remote only. I would imagine you tested out like a bunch of different ways that you can continue to do your UX work, and still align with your teams. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, to give examples of some of those processes that you might have tried, which ones failed and which ones like you're still using today and you feel that they've been pretty successful. And I'm super happy to go first if you need like a moment.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay. So on our team, like I mentioned before, I rely really heavily on whiteboarding. Like it's the best way for me to visualize like what exactly someone is talking about when we refer to our goals and why we want to make this feature the way we want to make it, as well as like quickly iterate on those ideas on the fly before I actually start going into like wireframes and flowcharts and all this stuff. And part of my whiteboarding is also establishing flowcharts on the whiteboard itself. So as soon as we went into COVID lockdown and work from home, like I immediately started looking up whiteboarding platforms. And I tried it several times and it just did not take off. People were very hesitant about actually whiteboarding with me in real time on a digital platform. And I'm not, I wasn't sure how to make it better or easier or more inviting for the team. So I quickly had to pivot on that. And one thing that, and like I mentioned before, we were in meetings all the time as well. So trying to identify how we could get the most value out of the meeting without keeping people locked in meetings all the time. Because otherwise one meeting could very easily become like a 2-hour, 3-hour meeting, and we didn't want that. So one thing that the team, like the design team, identified, especially our lead, was this thing called brain writing. And to give you guys context on what this is, everyone on our team is locked into meetings most of the week. And we had a choice. Either we get locked into a 3-hour meeting to, at a very high level, align on this feature that would take up half the meeting. And then after we've aligned on that, like this is the feature we want to go forward with, then align on how that feature works. That's why the meeting ended up being so long. So we started creating this process where we would say, hey, this is the feature that's coming in. What are your expectations about that feature? If this happens, what do you think should be included about that specific part of that feature? And we would send it out a week ahead of time to the designers, and the feature owner would be the person kind of looking through the document. The benefit of it was that anyone that would be involved in talking about that feature, or just all the designers, would be able on their own time sit down and look through this document and provide their feedback and provide their opinions, provide what it is that they think is the most important parts of developing that feature in a certain way. And then once we reach that alignment, we have a meeting to kind of go over it and clarify any doubts, realize that, yes, we're all on the same page. Yeah, just like, okay, this is what we're going forward with. We've identified it, let's do it. And then we start like our actual GDD process. That's been like super, super helpful and essential to us. And we're still doing it now. Aside from that, like I just started literally like whenever a smaller feature needs to get done and people are tied up, I'll be like, I'll do it. I'll do the GDD. The plus side is that UX is already integrated into the GDD itself. And instead of like me waiting for the GDD to come to me and then I work on the UX. The downside is that the data structure usually isn't in there. So I have to be like, come here, game designer, please talk about data in this section because I have no idea. And, you know, it has its pros and cons, but those are things that we've tried, have worked. Another thing I do directly is when we're in meetings and we're sharing our screen, we annotate a lot during our meetings. So if someone's sharing a wireframe or UI mockup or anything, we annotate directly. And that seems to help clarify anything.
Yeah, I would echo that part. I only just discovered that feature like probably like a month or so ago, and I was like, oh,
It's
man,
life-saving.
of course, Zoom. Yeah, it's great. I wish I'd found it earlier. I think and maybe Victor can talk more about this, but I think one of the things that just thinking about stuff that has changed is I think especially around like user research, which we would I was definitely more involved in last year up until COVID, and of course then it was much more difficult to get feedback, especially when we treat our like new features very with a great deal of sensitivity, and we would rather have it put on our own device than to show people, and that's like can't do that. So we've kind of, at least I haven't been really involved too much with user research since the start of COVID, but I think Victor has, and maybe we can talk a bit about how that's worked out. But I think that's something that I observed was just much more difficult with the process. And there are some things that I think we managed to do okay because we had done something before, like especially around we adopted. So when I first started, we were still sending out like mocks through like exporting things through Sketch and sending them through in Slack, and these images are just floating around, which is when which is terrible. It's terrible even without COVID. And so, thankfully we got like a new system, like any of these kind of design collaboration things have like definitely helped a lot. And probably we'll still look into others, but I can just think about like if we did not have that, that would be extra bad. So yeah, those are just some of my observations of what's some things that have been more challenging.
Yeah, in terms of like some of the tricks I discovered process-wise, I feel like you said, we already have so many meetings every day. So what I have been doing is that sometimes, I mean, almost every day, the engineers will have their stand-up, but they usually cannot use up all the time. So from time to time, I will steal some time from their meeting and try to show the design update to the whole team, the eng team, and also the PM will be in the meeting. So that way we can like involve eng and PM in the design process as early as possible. And I've been finding that to be very sufficient and effective. And in terms of the UX research, yeah, definitely it's becoming very hard to do that in this time because like I said, I'm mostly working on the AR features. So last year I was working on the AR multiplayer feature in Pokemon Go, and we were doing some user research, but because that was pre-COVID, so we were able to kind of just recruit test players to come to a place to test the stuff. And especially with AR feature, you kind of have to give player like explanation and guidance in person, and also to observe how they actually behave in that kind of, not just how they how their finger plays, also how maybe their body move, that kind of stuff. So and in this year, because we have similar needs for user research, so but we cannot like interact with real test players as easy as possible, as easy as before. So we kind of have to rely on some like external agency to help us coordinate. And yeah, and some of the setting, like the research setting, has to be more well designed to accommodate this kind of special situation. Yeah, so I think it's definitely challenging the how people usually do user research.
So I had been like kind of organizing like our user research stuff again. Like I'm kind of the person that's leading all of that on our team. And literally like what we came to was we have to do this remotely. Like there's really no other way. In our case for now, we're just internal testing, and that's just kind of like how we're doing it. But moving forward, like we have to consider, like, we don't know how much longer this is going to continue happening, and we know that hopefully things are going to change very, very soon. But until then, like we have to continue planning it as if it were for remote, and what changes can we make on the user testing side for that. There was another thing I wanted to mention. Let me think what it was. Well, never mind. Were there any other processes that you can think that you had to change on or start doing more of on your teams that just helped?
Also just writing things down more.
Yeah.
That tended to, I think, naturally happens. You kind of forced to.
Yeah, I think
things a little bit better than so.
Yeah, I think for us, one thing that we started doing a lot more, or trying to be a lot more better about doing, utilizing Jira tickets a lot more, especially like on the UX side, instead of just having folders just randomly all over the place and stuff, and linking back to those. Whenever someone has a question, it's like, hey, go check out this Jira. And all the UX is in there, the GDDs are in there, all the information that they would need, including the UI, would all be linked in that ticket. And we've been relying a lot more heavily on that, just to make sure that everything is clean and we're not looking through Slack for images, like the final images. Victor, I think were you going to say something?
No, actually, but yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, because we have to write more annotation, we are expanding a spec usually from 5 pages to 10 pages.
So kind of shifting a little bit because we're almost at time. So it's been a year, as we've been talking about. What have you done to become a better UX designer throughout this year? Like, you know, we talk about the company, we talk about our teams and everything, but you for yourself, your own personal goals and how you've been able to kind of continue to meet those goals for yourself. Like, what are things you've done to be better as a UX designer?
I don't know if I would have done any. I didn't have done anything differently than I probably normally would, other than in the past I've been able to go to like some UX conferences in person, and that obviously didn't happen this year. But I think for me, in general, I always love to find what new things out there, and always note down things that I like thought of. And I think especially this year, just seeing more things that allow people to interact remotely. I think that's that was a fun trend to see, and see it so pronounced, and especially I think in gaming as well. There's a bunch of games that probably would not have been successful in normal times. Yes. And now suddenly doing well. I think that says a lot about interesting ideas for the future. So I know it's a little vague, but I think that's kind of how I try to keep track of things.
Yeah, I feel the COVID it just forcing me to be a better communicator, especially if you have a feature involving too many different stakeholders and you have limited time. How are you going to I would say coordinate the whole collaboration process and to make sure everyone can align? Yeah, I think that's something. Another thing is I think it's more like a personal discovery. So I mean through this COVID, I realized how much I am empowered by working with people, because sometimes I feel like I'm an introverted person, but because usually I feel tired after talking to people, even though I could be pretty talkative and energetic talking to them. But I think really, I mean, being stuck at home this whole year, making me realize how much I do need to kind of to extract energy from interacting with people.
I agree with you on that one so much. Like I do like a lot of talks and workshops and stuff, but at heart I am an introvert too. So COVID did kind of force me to realize that I had to like communicate more with my team and advocate more for my team as well. More than I usually would in person, I would say. So on our team, we have like this really big push towards making sure that everything that we design is like accessible, that it's representative, that we're considering like diversity and that kind of stuff. And one big thing we actually accomplished this year, like several people on our team and in the company actually got like accessibility certified, APX certified. So that was like I would say that's like a really huge goal that we were able to meet this year, that I'm like really happy about. And it's literally everything we're doing is bleeding straight back into our process when we start designing things. Like our documents actually have like, we just started doing this, but our documents have like checklists for what we should be considering for those features on the accessibility side. So that was like a big improvement that we did and we still are doing right now. Like we're developing what that looks like. Another big thing I did this year as a UX designer was just trying to be a better mentor. So with COVID, like I know, one, a lot of people lost their jobs, and two, a lot of graduates are coming into an industry where it's a little slower than usual and it's a little harder to get like those jobs, choppy jobs. So I this year I felt like I stepped up as a UX mentor quite a bit to try and see how I can help people kind of like achieve those goals and get a little more visibility on them. It's not that I didn't do that before, but this year felt like it was very important for me personally and as a UX designer.
I think I was going to add, I think the mentorship side is especially I think challenging this year, and us and Peter and I, actually for the past 12 weeks we had Niantic had worked with this program called Treehouse to bring in 6 apprentices.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of an internship, and so it's especially challenging for those apprentices, the interns who joined, who could only ever see us through Zoom, and that's for us as well, because a lot of it, again, with everything we said before, like being in person, how do you help someone learn the ropes and succeed? So that was definitely a bit of a challenge, and we of course do things where, like we said, we want to make sure to do like every day or multiple times a week. In the end, I think it worked out. I think even despite all the challenges, I think this year, I think it's also surprising to me. I think challenged my assumption that still a lot of things can still get done, and so that surprised me, and I'm glad to see it, and excited to see that even through these challenges, you can still get almost where you want to go.
I'm going to take a quick look at kind of the questions that maybe have been queued up. What time is it? Oh, now I see what Celia was talking about.
Right, it's terrible.
Yeah. So,
but there were questions that you answered already all throughout the stuff.
Okay. Yeah. There's one question there that I might get back to in a bit, but before that, okay, I'm going to come back to the questions that we have. Super quick. Are there any UX trends that you foresee for 2021?
Well, I do want to see more of the remote interactions and those kinds of things continue.
Yeah.
And finding technology in ways that can bring people together. I think especially the biggest trend this year, and I think for quite some time.
I +1 that one. Victor?
Yeah, I'm more interested in that once the COVID is getting better, how those kind of UX trend which is shifting to remote interaction, how are they going to shifting back, or how this kind of in-person remote interaction are going to coexist?
Yeah.
I do think that I'm interested, to see.
Same, like I'm really interested in that. Like we've built so many very different habits over these last several months, and even like the thought of going back to the office, sometimes it's like terrifying for me. It's like, how do I do things again? So yeah, like process wise as well, like how do we shift back to, and how much re-education has to go into that as well, back to the processes that we had before. For me, I guess a little bit of a tangent compared to what you guys identified, but one thing I'm noticing a lot, like in different UX spaces and not just games, is like a lot of folks are asking for you voice and voice features, and within games and outside of games. And I'm starting to notice like a whole like role, a whole job that is like voice UX. I don't know very much about it. I'm kind of reading into it here and there in articles and stuff. Like, how do you UX voice features? Yes, it is so hard. I would like, on my end, I would really like to see like what flows look like for voice UX and what wireframes look like for voice UX, if that's even a thing.
Yeah. Well, I definitely know there are people who they're like voice UX designers and conversational interaction designers. I obviously am not one of those, and I don't have expertise in it, but it's something I have observed. I think not just this year, but over many years now, especially with Echo, the Amazon Echoes, and Siri, and the Google Assistant, and yeah, it's interesting just from an end user's perspective on that, and because it's a tricky thing to get right, and I found a lot of times it's annoying because it's like you have to say this wake word and then say your command and it doesn't listen to you, and it's like, okay, and at that point you're like, well, I just pick up my phone, so that's always, that interaction has always been interesting to me. But there's also some interactions where I do feel like it works especially well. I recently, one of my projects here with my parents is to kind of do some like smart home stuff and get some smart switches and lights and things like that. And so when I set that up, being able to say like, turn on the lights, like, oh, that's really great. And I think that particular moment is great. It takes a lot of subjects to get there, but
yes.
But then you realize, okay, there are definitely situations where it makes sense to have something like that.
Yeah. And before we end, and before I start like addressing some of the questions that we might see in the QA or chat, do you have any general advice for just junior designers or peers that might be struggling on remote teams?
For me, I think it's just to really, especially, it's true regardless, I think, remote or otherwise, is to focus on the basics of problem solving. Who is it? Who are the people you're trying to solve this problem for? What are the use cases? I think doubling down on those, I think is more important than ever, especially in this environment. So to me, that for someone who's new or someone who might be struggling, those are the key. Is really again, the basics of all. I think all UX is having empathy for other users and being able to advocate and walk in those shoes to others, especially on cross functionally, engineers, product, as well.
Yeah, my suggestion would be just be more proactive in the communication process, since UX designer usually serve as a glue across different functions, and this kind of remote collaboration could, miss some information along the way. So just be more proactive to make sure, everything is being conveyed to the right people. Yeah,
I agree with what both of you have said. It's something I would have definitely given advice on as well. On my end, it's okay to rely on others on your team, especially when you're new. Generally speaking, like the team knows that you're getting up to speed on things and you're getting to know the process and getting to know like how all the different departments interface with each other and work together with each other. It's okay to reach out to folks and ask for help and advice and be like, yo, like, how do I do this thing? Or can you help me figure out how to do this thing? How to set up a process for this? We never hire folks with the intent to like drop them. It's like literally the opposite. Like, we want you to do well on this team, period. Like, how can we help you succeed on the team? And at least me, when I'm working with a pod, when I'm working with my teammates, et cetera, like I'm always thinking of like, how can I help you? How can I make your job easier? And how can we identify the support that you need in order to get you there? And if I can't do it because obviously I'm just one person, then I'm going to help try to find how we can get you that support. Like, that's just kind of my OS, like how I function.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I think especially at that point, because I'm also someone who's traditionally been quite shy. And so I just kind of have to get over the fact that you have to reach out to people. You have to, sometimes bug them a little bit. And because I think the main part is, there's no point just being frustrated because you don't know what to do or you don't know how to solve a problem when you can ask. And
yeah,
I've been in that situation unnecessarily before, and I definitely think that's something that should just feel free to do that.
Yeah. The other point of advice I would give is if you are a UX designer that you're looking to get into the game industry, like you're coming from another field, tech or healthcare or anything else, definitely brush up on game design and game theory because it goes hand in hand with a lot of the stuff that you'd be doing. You need to understand like player motivation and player behavior and all that stuff, but from literally a game design perspective. It'll help you kind of speak the same language as your designers and try to reach alignment a little bit quicker rather than like teaching them how to teaching them how to speak your language. You're already meeting them halfway. So yeah, I think those are my two big ones. We have a few minutes left. I do see one question in the QA. But if folks want to like add more questions in chat or anything, like go for it and we can try to get through them as quickly as we can. So earlier there was a question, as a sole UX designer on the team, how did you convince buy-ins from your team and prove your value to them when you first entered the company? So in my case, like I had already worked at a few other companies like game and specifically within games. So with this team, when I came on, it's not really like they just wanted me to start things already. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of convincing really. And the team itself is very UX, has a really great UX mind already in place. It's just, they hadn't had a UX designer on the team up to that point, but they knew they wanted to do things right. So when I started, in my case, some of the very first things I did was a little bit of UX education, explaining to the team what design thinking was and doing like little workshops here and there and mentoring here and there as I was ramping up. One big thing that I think really helped was when I first came on, we didn't really have personas, or we hadn't identified specific type of players that we felt would be the ones for our game. And so literally the first thing I did kind of was just like identify the personas. But I sat down with the team to identify those personas and we kind of workshop this together. And that was like a 2-hour or 2-day workshop that we had to literally like kind of just put everything on the table. Because and I've done this workshop before, when I tell you something about what I think a player is, it might be very different in your mind and the way you're interpreting it versus what I'm actually saying or what I'm actually trying to convey. So part of the workshop is literally like writing on Post-its and just like putting them up on the wall and just identifying like, who is this person? What do they do? Why would they play this game? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And laying it all out, having everyone on the design team, stakeholders, et cetera, just lay it all out for us. Like, let us actually see like who we think and what our own internal interpretations were for those things. So I think it just kind of helped trust and identify and unite the game design team and just the UX process as a whole. I think that was a really valuable exercise that we did early on. Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. And we're at time. If there are no other questions from folks, again, thank you so much, both of you, for doing this panel with me and for Celia and for everybody in the UX land community.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.